Thank you very much. And that's a fantastic infographic that you just shared with us. That was really inspirational, actually.
Thank you.
My name's Liz Bowles, and actually it's lovely to be here with you this evening. So it's evening here in the UK, and I'm just so delighted it's stopped raining. We've had rain here in the UK for the past 4 or 5 months every day, and it's finally stopped for a bit, so it's lovely. So I'm just going to share a little bit with you about the Farm Carbon Toolkit and what we do. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, okay, cool. And what we do. I've got a few slides, so I'll just go through them, but really, yeah, let's just do that. We'll make a start with the slides. If I can share my screen. Okay, you should be seeing my screen now. Yes. I'll just go on to slideshow mode. There we go. So this is us. This is the Farm Carbon Toolkit. We're a community interest company. We were set up over a decade ago, in fact, now nearly 15 years ago, by farmers, for farmers. And it's very much important to farmers in the UK that the carbon calculator we provide for them is independent. So we don't have any axe to grind with supply chains or anybody. And we're a very unusual organisation in that we're a combination of advisors who actually support farmers face to face in understanding their carbon footprint and how to both reduce their emissions and build more carbon into their soils and trees and hedges, as well as being a team of software developers and technologists. And it's a great combination, actually, because our advisors are the best critics of our software. And this was a photo taken actually not that long ago, but we're growing fast as an organisation, and we're now one of the leading calculators for farm businesses in the UK, with close to 10,000 users at the moment. Now, let's see if this will work for moving on. Let's see. Hopefully you can, the slide has moved. Has it moved on? Yep.
Yes, that's what.
Lovely, thank you.
Yes, it's more.
Yeah, good, because sometimes some platforms you can't actually, they don't move on. So what I've just done here is, and it won't come as a surprise to any of you, I'm sure, but it's the changes that are happening to our climate and what's changing in terms of weather events as a result of climate change. And we're all experiencing it wherever we live in the globe. I think it's happening to all of us, perhaps to a greater or lesser extent, but it's certainly happening in the UK. And I suspect we're a bit surprised that things are changing as quickly as they are in the UK. I think we thought it might be a bit slower, but it's not. Certainly global heat waves are increasing, global cold events are getting less, heavy rain definitely increasing, because as temperature rises, clouds can deposit more rain, and global drought is also increasing. And we're expecting more of this in the future. And the only way that we can reduce the intensity of these weather events is to limit and start to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And that's really in all ways possible that we can do that. Now, just moving then on to agriculture, the biggest changes that are already happening, and I think this is the important bit to make this point, that these changes are already happening. Here in the UK this year, because of the rainfall we've had for the last 4 years, spring crops have not been drilled. So farmers are now faced with planting spring crops 2 months late or not bothering. And they're also still got crops in the ground that should have been harvested last year, like potatoes, sugar beet and carrots, that haven't yet been harvested because of the weather. So the crop development and growth is being massively affected by weather changes. And the other thing I think that we're all having to start think about is how we have to adapt to climate change by either growing different crops or changing how we manage livestock. And I was interested in the slides about bringing cattle into villages, because certainly what we're finding in the UK is we're having to plant more trees for shelter, And because without those trees, livestock will not do well. And that's becoming an absolute requirement. And also in the UK, we're having to provide for longer house periods because of extreme weather. And the same might be true in other parts of the world as well. And I think the other thing which we're just starting to see is this change in the kind of weeds, pests and diseases, how these patterns are changing. It may be helpful in some cases, or it's harmful, but it's certainly changing. The next slide I want to put up is just to show you that within agriculture, it's a bit different to the rest of our emissions picture. In agriculture, carbon dioxide is not by any means the main greenhouse gas. You can see on this slide, it's only about 10% of the emissions. This is the emissions from UK agriculture. It will depend a bit on the proportion of livestock within any farming system in any different country, but carbon dioxide is a relatively small greenhouse gas. The two really the greenhouse gases to focus on for agriculture are methane, coming predominantly from ruminants, from either biogenic, from fermentation, or from their manures and slurry, and nitrous oxide coming either from losses from soils or from production and application of chemical fertilizers. And that's something, and all these, the methane and nitrous oxide are very potent greenhouse gases. Then this is very much for the UK, but it's just to introduce to you the idea that for different types of farming, there are different sources of the main greenhouse gases. And that is really helpful because for farmers to look at where those emissions are coming from makes it much easier for them to think about how they're going to reduce them. And you can see on the left, the biggest one for arable farms is the blue bit, which is coming from fertilizer production and application. And that's primarily nitrous oxide. And for ruminant livestock farms, at least 50% is methane coming from biogenic fermentation. Basically, because ruminants are ruminants, methane is a byproduct of their digestion. Okay, so moving on, a little bit about farm carbon footprinting. I really don't know much about carbon footprinting outside of Europe. It's evolving rapidly. In the UK now, we are very mindful of all the evolving guidance from the Greenhouse Gas Protocol and from the FLAG guidance, and calculators are becoming rapidly more accurate. And I guess the point I wanted to sort of say to you is that it does make business sense to look at managing your emissions at farm level, mainly because by thinking about the farm's emissions, you can reduce some of them, and that often means reducing usage of fertilizers and feeds, change it how you procure electric, and that actually makes business sense. And what we find at Farm Carbon Toolkit is once farmers have embarked upon that journey of understanding their greenhouse gas emissions and then talking to people about how they can reduce them, change does happen. But it doesn't happen just by producing a report with a number. And well, certainly it doesn't happen in the UK, mainly because farmers, and in fact all of us, we're all on this journey of increasing our understanding of climate change and of greenhouse gas emissions. So simply to give somebody a number but not tell them what it means and what they can do with it is not as helpful as it could be. So here, just to sort of talk a little bit about agriculture, it's probably the most complicated sector to do a carbon audit for because it's a biological system. And for that reason, the carbon calculators are very complicated within agriculture. And it's something that we've worked very hard to make our calculator as accurate as it can be. And we're now one of the leading calculators used in the UK, both by individual farm businesses and also by groups of farm businesses and by areas. I wouldn't necessarily call them villages, but it would be joined up landscapes. who work together to understand their combined carbon footprint. So what does the carbon footprint do? Effectively, what it's doing, it's quantifying the contribution that each individual farm or entity is making to climate change. It identifies the tons of and sources of carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide coming from that farm. And again, starts to highlight where that farm business can make improvements. And the bit that's probably most important here to think about for agriculture and land is that land has a huge potential, as well as emitted greenhouse gases. It has a huge potential to remove them from our environment. And certainly in Europe, that's one of the really key drivers at the moment for farm businesses to be able to store carbon into soils through good farming practice, but also into trees and other biomass crops. So what can farmers do? And these key actions, I would say, are universal in terms of their applicability. So definitely it's about bringing more trees into farm landscapes. It's about adopting practices, and I'll come to these in just a minute, that are more lower carbon farming practices. I'm not sure how relevant it is in your countries, but in the UK, we've got a lot of peat, and we're not looking after it very well. It amounts to about 20% of all the emissions from agriculture we're losing from our peatlands. Certainly, it's growing bioenergy crops. And it's not just farmers that have to change, it's also us as human beings. We need to reduce our food waste and also our consumption of energy-intensive foods. And then just moving on to some of these helpful farming practices, which are really low carbon practices. Cover crops, keeping ground covered, absolutely critical. It's something every farmer should be doing whenever possible. Changing crop rotation to those that have a greater diversity and deeper roots helps to hold the soil together. Stopping pulling ploughs through the ground. So in other words, keeping ground covered but not turning it over too much. Integrated pest management, moving away from chemicals. Changing grazing patterns to keep more cover on the ground and have longer resting periods between grazing, and planting. This will be something that you may not be familiar with, but planting much more diverse grass species and herbal lays for livestock to graze. And it might actually be relevant for the cattle you're putting into villages to have these really diverse plants that the cattle can eat. And then when it comes to planning for the future, for farmers, these are the things to focus on, and they're quite straightforward. The emissions from farm businesses are coming from fuels, from inputs like fertilizer and feeds, from materials like concrete, steel, that kind of thing, actually from the crops themselves, from the livestock themselves, and also from manures and other waste products. And the task of farmers is to reduce those wherever they can. And then secondly, to start to store as much carbon as possible in trees. Hedges are a very UK-centric phenomenon. We don't have fences between fields. We have banks of soil with plants on top, which are called hedges, and they sequester an awful lot of carbon for us. And then also non-cropped areas around cropped areas and soils. And those are, and if I just leave you with one statistic, it's this, that for every 0.1% increase in soil organic matter, that's equivalent to 9 tons of carbon per hectare removed from our environment. And that is just massive. Thank you. I'll stop there. If I can work out how to do it.
Madam Alice, it was a very informative presentation, and I would like to ask a few questions. If you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, Madam Liz, actually,
Yes.
You rightly pointed out that there are certain issues.
I think
We lost Javed.
I think he's lost, yeah. Perhaps he'll come back in a minute.
I think he's muted, actually. I think he's muted.
He's back.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So we have here in Pakistan, and particularly in Sindh province, we have very minimum ratio of forestry.
Ah, right.
So first of all, I as a teacher, I'm working as a assistant professor in the Department of Crop Physiology, Sindh Agriculture University. I have worked on different criteria of crop production, trees, growth, and all the wasteland and other issues, climatic issues, climate change, and high temperature issues. So I want to draw your attention towards the forestry ratio. We have here very minimum forestry ratio.
Yeah.
For this, your help will be required to our department or with your collaboration to analyze, first of all, the high temperature effects. For example, just you mentioned that there must be a toolkit for carbon calculator. So can you please provide such kind of any toolkit or some such kind of equipments by signing a project with you to calculate the photosynthetic rate, the growth rate, and all the, for example, carbon dioxide calculator or some kinds of such kinds of equipments to reach out before tree plantation and after the tree plantation impacts. So I would request you to help us to increase first of all the forestry, and maybe I will send you a project to work on it deeply for different aspects. For example, to increase organic matter in the soil and the high temperature impacts. So we can cover it very nicely.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Javed. And absolutely, I mean, you're absolutely right. Certainly what we're starting to find in the UK and in Europe now is farmers are starting to look at sort of tree crops, because if you can plant trees, they will help to reduce temperatures. They'll provide shade for livestock, but they can also produce some crops. And that might be something in terms of crop changes that we're all going to have to start thinking about. But certainly we do now, within our calculator, if a farmer has got trees, our calculation will include the likely level of carbon increases per year that tree is accomplishing within the overall farm. What I would say, though, is this, that for Pakistan, our calculator has got emissions factors for Northwest Europe, and we have started to develop international versions for different parts of the world, but we haven't yet produced one for your part of the world. And I do think that would be necessary because the emissions factor is different because of the climate. But other than that, you know, it's something we'd be very interested. I'd be very interested in looking at what we can do to help.
Yeah, because being a crop physiologist, I can better understand that how much carbon have been captured by the trees or plants, and how much they utilize to make the uh, carbohydrates by the process of photosynthesis, and how much oxygen produced by these particular trees or plantations. So
Yeah.
for that cases, we will be needed some equipments to analyze before and after impacts.
Okay.
So
mean,
I want to,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I have to say at the moment, all calculators do this using estimates, but those estimates are based on work that was done to do actual measurements. So, and I don't know whether those actual measurements have been done in your countries. So,
Yeah,
for instance,
sure. We are actually already working on it, but for my department, for my
yes.
subject of crop physiology, so I will be needed such kind of equipments to work on it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
May I add?
Yeah,
May I add something?
Liz,
Thank you, ma'am.
okay,
Thank you so much.
can I take this question? Dr. Javed, thank you very much for your brilliant question. The thing is, the kind of collaboration we are going to establish, we have to define those demands in terms of the different grant applications. So as a consortium, we will be going to the relevant donors, where practically we will define a complete project with very clear timelines and milestones. And then we will, through that, we will generate the uh, bill of material that this is what needs to be done. And for that matter, we need those equipment and manpower, whatever. And once we get that project logged, all the resources logged, definitely we will be getting all those resources to execute the each and every project, I would say. So that's the main purpose of starting this collaboration. So as a universities, we know there are streams where we can go and knock their doors to get those resources for you to do the research, do the analysis, whatever is required, and that's one of the main agenda of our programming. So we do work on this thing step by step.
Thank you, Nazir.
May I just add one thing? Yes, you are right. We will need some monitoring first to understand what are the carbon emissions and so on. And there are plenty of toolkits also out now. And so, of course, as Nazir mentioned, we can definitely, actually, I am working with one person, I mean, one organization who are already carrying out these type of, measurements, especially with the heat or like what type of increase in heat or carbon emissions and all. And we can definitely bring that to you through the project. Thank you.
Dr. Erslan, is there any question on your part, or we can request Dr. Runika to share her presentation?
We are running out of time, so let's proceed. Maybe there will be
There's one hand up. I don't know whether it's a question, Mohammed.
Sorry, I didn't
There's
hear.
one hand up, Dr. Meherunissa.
Okay. There is one hand. Yeah. Maybe you can unmute and.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome. I am Dr. Meherunissa from Sindh Agriculture University, Tanujam. So I have nice presentation to Liz Baul. I have question for Liz Baul. So what are key challenges faced by farmers in adopting carbon reduction strategies, and how does the toolkit address these challenges.
Okay.
And my another question is, as you know, Hoopo working on project carbon neutral villages. So the main objective to create on calculator. So how you can help to make calculator for Pakistan?
Okay, thank you. So I would say that the biggest challenge for farmers to adopt low carbon farming strategies or strategies to reduce their emissions is generally lack of knowledge, because it's a newish topic for many farm businesses to know what they need to do. And then the second part with that is concern about the risk if they have to change their practices very much to reduce their business emissions. Because I don't know what it's like in Sindh, but certainly in UK, farmers don't make a lot of money. And if they change practice and it means they lose money, they don't want to do it. So there's those two things to think about. It's understanding what to do and being confident that it won't reduce their profits. So that's one thing. And then the second question I think I understood you to ask was about how could we make our calculator able to do the footprint for a whole village. So I was trying to explain that our calculator, we can use it to amalgamate the footprints of a number of different farms and different entities. And we do that through something we call white labels, which means that all the footprints can be brought together, which I think was probably what we're going to have to do. We'll probably have to call it a village calculator. And then it means that everybody within the boundary can put their emissions into their own report, and those reports can be amalgamated so that we can see what's happening across the whole village.
Yeah, brilliant. Let me add to what Liz said. Yes, the roadmap we are developing how we can leverage the farm tool calculator to Pakistani village farm calculators. First of all, we are working with Dr. Nazia to kind of establish the questionnaires to collect the data with the help of the students to use the existing calculator and get the know-how, technical knowledge, how they can use the inputs and other parameters uh, to practically measure the emissions from model villages. And using that platform, we would be practically announcing different certification program as a Hoopo to incentivize the students and the research fellows to practically work on those survey design, data analysis, and then we will work with the farm tool calculator organization to go to the next level. So in the background, we were working with Sindh Agriculture University, and I would like to invite Dr. Arslan to give us the resources from the University of Alberta, so we can have a working group, different working group in place to establish, those sub projects, and then we will take it into, next level, step by step certification, all the way to the proper projects, customization of the toolkits, and customization of the protocols. All that is required under the roadmap. So this is the kind of path we are going to follow to practically take the help from the consortium to deliver the different projects on ground.
Hello everyone. Hello, Dr. Liz. This is Dr. Khalid Hussain Jilu. I am working as assistant professor in Sindh Agriculture University, Tanojam. At present, I am postdoc fellow at the Chinese Academy of Agriculture Sciences, Beijing, in China. So let me share you a recent report by China government that NDCS, China has set the target to strive to peak its carbon dioxide emissions before 2030 and achieve its carbon neutrality before 2060 or 2060. Compared to this, we need a strong collaboration and a highly efficient steps from University of Alberta in connection to Hoopo Canada, as we already have signed MOU with Hoopo Canada with the nice efforts of Mr. Nasir Qureshi, and we have a focal person there, Dr. Abdul Wahid Solangi, who are doing very nicely in terms of carbon neutral villages development. So what we want from University of Alberta to achieve a milestones like increasing forest, that is the one thing, and to work on a solar system, that is another thing, and to reduce GHG emission by educating most of the rural people of Sindh province, mostly in Sindh province. So in this regard, at what level from the side of University of Alberta can engage students as well as research scientists and faculty members? I want to ask from Liz, Ms. Liz.
Okay. Thank you for the question. So, I mean, I think, again, really, it's back to what Nazir was saying before. I think all of these things are possible. It's simply for us to sit down and work out what our aims and objectives will be over the next 5 years, and what really to put together a plan for it, and then to think about who we go to actually help to fund all these activities. But absolutely, and certainly everything you said is something that our calculator can do. But again, I go back to the point, I think for Pakistan, we will need to customize the calculator.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, great. Dr. Sun, can you comment on the question, how we can work with the University of Alberta in this platform?
Definitely, we have to look for mutual grant writing opportunities, and then we can go from there. The only route I can see for now. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, that will be awesome.
We have young talent like students. They can think about opportunities as well when they are. They know that.
Yeah, we have energetic students as well. We have energetic students as well from Department of Entomology and Department of Plant Protection, who recently joined a 2-day workshop organized by Hoopo Canada.
Yeah. Okay, I move forward to the last.
Dr. Shah, we are running out of time. Let's go to, I think, next agenda point.
The students will leave in a few minutes.
Okay.
That's the bottleneck.
Yeah, maybe Dr. Ronika, you can.
Thank you very much. I don't have to say much because Liz has already mentioned the importance of carbon. But I would just emphasize that you know, first of all, I want to appreciate the audience. I have not seen such an enthusiasm from people anywhere I hold these meetings. First of all, thank you very much for Nasir, who has organized this, and all other leaders here from different organizations have taken this step to come on board, and especially Liz. Wherever we go and we just shout at her, she is here. So I'm very, very thankful to Liz. And
Yes, same
also
here, same here.
answering these very, very difficult questions that she has in front of us, you know, like she is taking all the burden of ours on her shoulder. So thank you very much for that. And all of you who are here, I think the enthusiasm is here. We have methodologies in the world. We know what to do. It's only about starting first step, that let us do what we can do on this step and then go forward with other things. Don't stop. Of course, I know the grants and fundings are very, very important. We all are working towards it, but don't stop for that. Please start doing whatever you can do within your reach. One thing you can definitely teach, for example, Javed was asking what we can do. I know there are toolkits out, and the toolkits are also out on the YouTube video. You can look at that and prototype the toolkits at home. And I will bring person of that type who can teach you, who educates university level people for toolkits. Train the trainer model. Even if you talk, your talk should be on the, even on the your dinner table, you should be talking about carbon. You should be talking about your activities, how we can decrease our carbon impact. And I know that developing countries don't have that pressure of decreasing carbon impact, and therefore they never understand that language of carbon. But whatever we do, whatever we eat, whatever the activities we do, they all are calculated in carbon today. It is a time, I always say again and everywhere, that it is a time for carbon literacy. 100 years ago, there was a time of literacy only, where everyone was asking to increase the literacy. That is, everyone should know to read and write. That was our demand that time. But today it is a demand of knowing carbon literacy. And what I mean by that if you walk certain distance, say for example 2 kilometers, if you walk 2 kilometers, you are going to emit zero carbon. But if you are going to cycle, drive for 2 kilometers, you are going to emit carbon. And so think like that. Each and every activity today is measured in carbon. Your food that comes on the table also is embodied carbon. It brings embodied carbon to your table. So think of that way and try to understand what is carbon. Carbon literacy is very important, and change your practices so that you can become low carbon. And why it is necessary? Because that can help to minimize our impact on the environment. And at the same time, you have the possibilities, you will get an innovative ideas to increase your environment biodiversity or enhance your environment. So first of all, stop, then protect, then enhance, and then increase, so we have to go that way. We have to reverse our, as Javed mentioned, we are at the beginning of like afforestation, deforestation. So how we can increase afforestation? All things are going. And here, Nasir has brought an innovative project to Pakistan, and you all must take the interest in it, understand it, why it is the essence of understanding it, and talking to people, advocating it is also going to help us. Having that, I would also say that please join this movement, and definitely be assured that this team will bring something better to you, and be prepared to contribute. So thank you very much.
Yeah, Dr. Islam, I think we are running out of time. So if you can do the closing, remarks on the.
We can definitely, but there is still one hand, I believe, from Dr. Nazia. At least maybe we can quickly take this question. Dr. Nazia, are you there? And and Saddam Hussein. Maybe one of them can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Video call orang jual kan tulis. Nah, nak dia sampai tak. Lalu cari nak jual tu video call kalian.
We cannot hear.
Sona hूँ.
Some network issue.
Hello,
Now,
Assalamualaikum.
me?
Hello,
Hi.
Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum
Yes,
salam.
go ahead.
I am Saddam Hussein, working as a planning officer, agriculture extension. Now the climate change is a big issue on smart climate, agriculture resilience, and as well as farmer field school to reduce the climate change effects on the crops. And the nowadays climate change, the temperature is increase the effect on the crop productivity, and the effect of the different type of droughts and heavy rains. So now we are work on the smart agriculture, resilience agriculture to reduce the droughts and the disasters of climate and due to effect on the various in Sindh. How to reduce?
Yeah. Shall I have a go at answering that, or was it more of a comment?
Yeah,
You can give your comment at least.
Okay, so yeah, and it's the universal problem, Saddam, and certainly the one thing I think that all farmers must do more of is to keep ground covered. So don't have bare soil whenever possible. So what's happening in the UK now is we leave crops, we leave something called a cover crop in the ground all the time, and then we plant different crops into that cover crop. So there are always roots and cover on soil. And I think probably that's even more important in countries where temperatures are higher, because what we have found is where soil is covered, the actual temperature of the soil is 3 or 4 degrees lower than where it's bare. So, and that's really important.
Thank you very much.
Sir, I have a question, please. I have one question, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, Dr. Liz. This is Dr. Mumtaz. I just want to ask, what are the basics for the carbon calculator preparation in our domestic environment? How we can prepare, or what are the team members or what are the team efforts required for the preparation of carbon calculator?
Okay.
If we want to initiate it.
Okay, so I've put into the chat that you can go onto our website and literally start to produce a footprint. It won't be accurate because it uses UK emissions factors, but if you go onto our calculator, there's a spreadsheet there, and that will help you to know the kind of information that you need to collect about your farm business in order to produce a carbon footprint.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, and the final remarks as we draw the workshop to close. I want to express my deepest gratitude to each of you for your participation and engagement today. It has been profoundly enriching experience to delve into the complexities and nuances of carbon neutral initiatives and environmental impact assessment alongside such passionate individuals that we had today. Let's move forward with this renewed commitment to our collective mission of sustainability and environmental stewardship. I look forward to seeing the impact of your efforts and hopefully to collaborating on future initiatives. Thank you. And
Thank you very much. Awesome. Thank you.
Mohammed,
Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye. Take care.